Well, hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graben, and I'm really excited today to be joined by two guests. They are co-authors of the upcoming book, Mentor to Millions, Secret of a Success in Business and Beyond. And so our guests are Kevin Harrington and Mark Timm. So let me tell you about Kevin real quickly. You may recognize him as one of the original Sharks. I recognize him as that on the hit TV show Shark Tank. Get this, he's the creator of the infomercial. He's a pioneer of the as seen on TV industry, and he's the co-founding board member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, founded in 1987. And you can learn more about Kevin at kevinharrington.tv. And we're joined again by his co-author, Mark Timm. Mark has been a serial entrepreneur and exponential thinking practitioner for almost 3 decades. He's started more than a dozen companies, several of which have multiplied and have been sold. He's spoken professionally for more than 25 years, giving thousands of speeches to over 1 million people around the globe. And you can find out more about him at marktimm.com. So Kevin and Mark, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
And I want to let the audience know, related to their book, Mentor to Millions, if you stay on till the very end of the episode, you're going to learn about a special offer. If you'd like to have a shark as your mentor, make sure you stay tuned for that. The theme here on the podcast is about learning from mistakes and growing and kind of reflecting on something you might consider your favorite mistake. Kevin, what would you want to share with the audience there?
Well, I'm going to go back. It was 30 years ago. I made a big mistake. Okay. I made plenty since then too, but I'll go back to one of the first big ones that I made. So I was in the as seen on TV business. We were doing about $100 million a year in business. So we built the company up nicely, had about a dozen products on television, Jack LaLanne and the Juicer and George Foreman and Tony Little and Billy Mays and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so every week we would do about 2 million in sales. And most of it happened over the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because we didn't like to advertise on Wednesday morning when just the wife was home. It was more, weekend oriented. So I would leave on Friday and come in on Monday and expect, we're going to get our tally on sales and we're going to get that 2 million, generally, give or take that, probably 1.8 to 2 million in sales deposited in our account on Monday morning. So come in on Monday, my CFO is sitting in my office and he's like very upset. And he's like, Kevin, I don't know what to tell you, how to tell you, but the bank is not going to send us the 2 million this week. They're holding it. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're holding it in a reserve account against our credit card processing account, right? And so as we got into it, as it turned out, they actually did have a legal right to do that, at least initially. And if they felt like they didn't have enough reserve, we had a $500,000 reserve sitting there. So now that 2 million though represented my life, my business. This is 30 years ago. I was not a wealthy guy at the time. And that was my cash flow, my operating capital, my payroll for the next week, my inventory, my media. It was my existence. And so to them, they thought, let's just grab, this guy's doing 100 million. We're just going to grab 2 million, but we were out of business. So what we found out was this. We sat down with the bank. One of our products was having a big defect problem from the factory. So we would bring 10,000 pieces in, we would ship 10,000 pieces, 3,000 of them were defective. So all these calls going to the banks, what they have to do? Let's just freeze this account. So that's what they did. They grabbed all of our cash, froze the account, and put us out of business, more or less. Now, at the end of the day, we ended up working ourselves through this whole mess. And what ended up happening was, it's a long story. I won't get into every detail, but we were able to force them to give us back 1.6 million of it eventually, not like a day later, unfortunately, but and let them have an extra 400,000. But this is what we did, and this is what we learned. Mm-hmm. We had 12 products running on one merchant account. If you have one little problem with one product, you're out of business. This product represented probably 3% of our sales, but 100% of our aggravation with the bank. Wow. And so what we did from there is we set up separate merchant accounts for every single product, separate businesses, separate profit and loss statements, et cetera. And we ran our business completely in these little silo kind of situations. So an amazing learning curve. We did get our money back. We did survive. We ended up building that business to 500 million eventually. But at the end of the day, we would never have been able to do it if we still ran on one merchant account. So that was a big learning curve for me.
Wow. And it's all, as always, it's good to learn from mistakes and not repeat them. And I can only imagine there was that period of trying to figure out, well, why are they holding the funds back? Is that because they were protecting against chargebacks or things that might naturally occur, or there was more than normally occurred?
Yeah. So this one item that we had was that they were shipping us a high defective rate of goods. Yeah. Now, I'm not a manufacturer. I pay good quality manufacturers to make good quality products. Little did I know, we even QC some stuff at the factory, but little did we know, because it would hit our warehouse and just go right out. Mm-hmm. Well, the first 10,000 pieces, we were, massive problems. And people get upset when you ship them something that they plug in and doesn't turn on. It's like, what's going on here? Right. They almost think they're being ripped off, right? We weren't trying to rip anybody off. We had a bad manufacturer that needed to tighten up his manufacturing quality assurance processes. So once we figured it all out, the bank understood that this wasn't our whole company that was in trouble. It was just this one product. We're going to stop selling that product, and et cetera. But it's it's something we never wanted to have to go through again.
Yeah, and it sounds like you were able to avoid that then. And that's probably a lesson you shared with others in other settings when you're mentoring and coaching other businesses.
Yeah. I don't publicly tell very many people except in forums like this, but and Mark, is this in the book, by the way? Did we talk about it?
In fact, we have a whole section in the book that's just dedicated to this story, but not just this story, but there's a lot of stories that Kevin said since then of where he's experienced failure. In fact, we have an entire chapter of the book that's called From Failure to Phoenix, and it's all about failures, and it's about falling down and getting up stronger than you were before you fell down. And that's really the true test of any successful entrepreneur, is not how successful they've been, but how they responded to the failures that they've had in their life. And we dig into that in a big way. And this is one of the key stories that we unpack, even bigger than what Kevin did right here and was able to in this recording.
Yeah, and Kevin, thank you for being willing to admit that. I mean, one of the key themes here on the podcast again is that we all make mistakes. Even really successful people, sharks, have things they learn from in their lives. So thank you.
You bet.
For being willing to share that. So, again, the book that Mark Timm mentioned is called Mentor to Millions. And Mark, I was wondering if Mark Timm, if you could join us, or if you could share an example of something that was a favorite mistake that you've learned and grown from.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine's a little different take, and that is I've got 6 kids. And I became an entrepreneur. I worked in corporate America, and I became an entrepreneur because I wasn't seeing my kids at all. I was going to work before they got up. I was coming home after they were already in bed. And I'm like, this is not why I was put on this earth. I was put on this earth to be a husband, a father. And so I'm going to become an entrepreneur so that I can be that person that I was set to be. And I had a lot of success as an entrepreneur. But what happened is that while I was busy being an entrepreneur, I became just as busy. And what happened was my family of 6 kids and a wife was getting my last and my least. And because they were getting my last and my least, they started to resent the fact that I was an entrepreneur. They didn't like the fact that I was an entrepreneur. I was missing games. I was missing commitments. I was on the phone. And in turn, I started working more hours than I was when I was working in corporate America. And that was a huge mistake that I made. In fact, the book that you're referencing, Mentor to Millions, starts out, the opening line is, I pulled into my driveway and I stopped my car because I knew I didn't want to go home. Now, the reasons for an entrepreneur not to want to go home is I just filed bankruptcy. I just lost a lot of money. But in my case, it was because I just had one of the most incredible days as an entrepreneur. I made 99 out of 99 decisions with confidence and clarity. I made one of the biggest sales I'd ever made. And I stopped at the end of my driveway because my family couldn't see me yet. And I didn't want the feeling to end. I knew as soon as I went home, I was going to be faced with chaos and confusion instead of confidence and clarity. And that was a massive mistake that I had made in my life to position it the way that I did. And it was that day, and we unpack this in the book. In fact, it's a whole lesson that is an undercurrent in the entire book. And the undercurrent goes like this. What if the most valuable business that you will ever own, ever operate, ever be a part of, ever be on a board of directors, ever be in a meeting about, was the business you were going home to instead of the business you went to that day? And the business I'm talking about is your family. And it was that day that I sped home up that driveway because I had gotten it figured out. And I made my family my most valuable business. And thanks to mentors like Kevin, I figured out that I could take the lessons that Kevin was teaching me about business and scale, and I could apply them at home and start scaling. That's why the book is more than just business. You can learn a lot about business in Mentor to Millions, but you're going to learn a lot about how to scale relationships, scale family, and beyond. And the results that happen as a result of that decision, figuring it out, I started giving my family my first and my best instead of my last and my least. I actually legally incorporated my family. You can look it up on the register. To Be Timm's LLC is a legal entity of my family in the state of Indiana. And I started running that family like it was my most valuable business. And the results that happen with my family and the relationships with my kids are beyond anything I could have ever even dreamed when I first left corporate America to become an entrepreneur. It's because I figured out, I learned from my massive mistakes. I got real mentors in my life, not just for business, but for family. And then I watched that valuable business scale to be what I consider the most valuable business in the world.
Wow. And so I'm sure that, like you said, there's more about this in the book. People for a long time have talked about work-life balance, and there's almost a trendy, newer phrase, work-life integration. Is that something that resonates with you? Or
work-life balance is a myth. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who seeks out to get work-life balance, they're going to fall off one side of the log or the other. There is no such thing as work-life balance as an entrepreneur. You're just going to be treading on that, and then you're going to fall flat on your face. Work-life integration is a way better way. How did I find more time? I was still busy, okay? But how did I find the time to build the relationships? For 3 years, and Kevin knows this because he experienced it. During the period of our mentorship relationship, where Kevin's the mentor of me, I traveled. I didn't go a single business trip without one of my kids with me for 3 years. And that meant that I was going to big time meetings with Kevin Harrington, and one of my kids was with me. I was going to his house and strategizing, and one of my kids was with me. And I think at first Kevin was like, what's going on? But then it became kind of cool because they were evolving in front of his eyes because they were in proximity to people like Kevin. So he was mentoring me, but in a way he was mentoring them as well. And it was beautiful. And they are forever changed because of that decision. So was I still busy? Yes, but I integrated them into my busyness, and it changed everything.
So as a result, did the family share more of that sense of excitement and pride from your business success?
So I gave you the beginning of the book, which is me sitting at the driveway, not wanting to go home.
Yeah.
The end of the book. So Kevin talks about magical transformation. That is his big thing. If you can show magical transformation, it's everything. Well, the magical transformation in the book is 5 years after, through this whole experience, the end of the book is 3 of my kids going up on stage, and the person, there's 500 people in the audience, and they saw my kids with me while I was speaking at this conference, and they said, we want to talk to your kids. No time to prep them, no time to tell them anything. They set them up on stage and said, what was it like being the child of an entrepreneur? And within minutes, the entire audience is in tears, consoling each other in tears, listening to my kids talk about how much they resented me being an entrepreneur, how much they hated me being an entrepreneur 5 years earlier.
Wow.
But now how profoundly their life has changed and how they wouldn't want their father being anything but an entrepreneur. And it's only because, listen, I'm the same person driving the same vehicle in the same house that I was at the beginning of that book. But at the end of the book, what changed is me and my mindset and my commitment to them, and it changed everything in their life. And the people in the audience were crying because they dream someday of their children saying that about them. Because as entrepreneurs, that's ultimately what we want. We want to be the father, the husband, the business owner, the CEO of our family that we were put on this earth to be.
Wow. So in the book preview, one of the themes that really jumped out to me is, as it said, fail fast, recover more quickly, and learn the important lessons that will take you to your next big win. And to me, that's what this podcast is all about. So maybe can each of you, maybe back to you, Kevin, share one other example where, as it says in the book description, failure has been an integral part of the journey. I know you already shared your one example there, Kevin, but
so when I first started doing infomercials, I got all excited about my very first project, and it was successful and it worked, and that was great. And then I go on to the next one and it bombed, and the next one and it bombed. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm out of business. Okay. I don't know how to do this anymore. But then about the fourth or fifth, sixth one, oh, it worked, and we had another hit. So now I'm thinking, well, okay, what is this? It's like, so as it turned out, I'm in the product development business. I launch products. They're not all going to work. You've got to get your mind set for that, because like when I hired my son, he graduated from Penn State. He starts in the company, and he's running around doing projects, and he had this one that he was just knew was going to work, and when it launched, it bombed, and he was just devastated. So because I hadn't prepared him for failure. And so I figured out I was hitting on 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 of my projects, which meant I failed 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 times. And so the important thing was to get the most you could out of those failures and learn from them, do a post failure, kind of review and analysis of what went wrong and why it went wrong. Of course, we always did a little tweaking. We didn't just accept failure. We'd go back and try some new things, 1, 2, or 3 times before we declared it dead. But we realized that not everything was going to hit. That's a fact of business. So how do we put as little money as possible into the failures? And this is fail cheap, fail fast, fail cheap, but understand that this is part of life. And as Winston Churchill said, success is being able to go from failure to failure without the loss of enthusiasm. Okay. So I didn't quite get enthused to fail, but no, I did. I was able to look at it and say, what did I learn from that? Let's take that value that we got, move on to the next one, because the next one's going to be a big hit. And as it turned out, yes, our business, it was a numbers game. And as we started being able to identify the key components of success, we could minimize the things that we tested. And now this was all done in the old days on TV, which was very expensive. Now we can do it on Facebook and Instagram with $5 ads and not $5,000 media buys, right? So it's in today's world, it's a lot easier. But I'm just now conditioned to be able to handle the fact that not everything's going to work. And my son also, he understands that too, because he's been around it and learned it also.
It probably, I mean, you talked about having your first one as a success versus your first one as a failure. That's got to be a different.
Well, thank God it was successful, because if it was a failure, I may have decided never to do any more of that again. But the first one did hit. It was great, and so it was just that sometimes we'll go through 10 launches of things, and they all fail. but then we'll hit 2, 3 winners in a row. So it kind of averages out for us, at least 1 out of 3 to 1 out of 4 are working. And by the way, if one of those winners happens to be $100 million success, like we had several of that. We had more than 3 of those with Tony Little alone. But so you learn that the big ones can pay for a lot of failures.
Yeah. And Mark, since the book is focused on mentoring, and you've talked about the mentoring that you've gotten from Kevin, can you think of a common mistake that's made in the mentoring process, either by the mentor or the mentee?
Yeah, I certainly can. So I'll speak to both of them, in that regard, because I can be pretty concise on this. And that is, one of the mistakes that people make in choosing a mentor is they choose someone that they think, oh, I got to talk to this person because, they can really help me. But at the end of the day, you need to choose a mentor that you know more about them, so you know what they can help you, that you like them, and that you trust them. That know, like, and trust is so important. And the reason it's so important in selecting a mentor that you know, like, and trust, or you've read their content, you may not know them personally, but you know who they're about, you follow them on social media, is because ultimately they're going to give you advice and they're going to share their wisdom, and you need to implement it. So the biggest mistake that a mentee makes with a mentor is they don't implement. The number one goal of any mentee should be to be the mentor's best student. If you can be their best student, and I'm telling you, it's in the book, so I'll just tell you right now, when Kevin agreed to mentor me, I doubled down. I actually took my family from Indiana down to St. Petersburg, Florida for a month so that I could be in proximity, not so I could stalk Kevin. We were already way beyond, in our relationship. I came down there, though, because he had precious little time, and I wanted to be in proximity to him when those opportunities came up, whether it was a meeting or a lunch, or, as it turned out, playing golf with Kevin or traveling on the same plane with Kevin. We've got some great stories about our travels that we had together and what I learned on those travels. So I doubled down and said, if this man is going to give me some of his time, and I see how valuable his time is, I'm going to be his best student. And you know what ended up happening? He gave me more time. So when you become the best student of your mentor, they're busy. They've got no time, but they'll give you more time if they see you implementing, if they see you doing what they tell you to do. That is a huge mistake. People say, oh, I want you to be my mentor. They give them 3 things to do. And the next time they see them, they're like, how'd it work out? And they're like, oh, I haven't quite got to that yet. I'm going to do that next. You think that mentor is going to be very excited to give them any more wisdom or advice? Heck no. They're not going to give them any more wisdom or advice. So when you get a mentor, be willing to commit, be willing to implement, be their best student, okay? And choose a mentor that you're, and by the way, it goes both ways. If you're going to become a mentor, because the secret to our book, Mentor to Millions, is not about money. It's about impact. If you're listening and you've got the ability to impact millions of people, the fastest way to impact them is to have the right mentors and then be the right mentor. That's the secret formula. If you have the right mentors and you become the right mentor, that is the exponential explosion that allows you to impact millions of people. So if you're a mentor and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to start sharing this and being a mentor for others, you better choose people that you know, like, and trust. You better choose people that you're willing to invest in, or you're going to fall short as well. So mentor to millions, be a mentor, have the right mentor, and then sit back and watch the fireworks go.
Well, and so this humble little podcast might not reach millions, but I do appreciate you sharing these thoughts and advice for the listeners and the viewers. Kevin, I just want to throw it back to you one last time. Do you have any thoughts as, hearing Mark describe that mentor-mentee relationship, anything you would add from your side of that?
Yeah, I think he's dead on. I mean, as a mentor, and you're putting your time and your effort, generally there's no strings attached. There's no monetary situation in many of these situations. So if I'm doing all of that and giving great ideas and coming up with amazing, whether it's content or partnership possibilities, and then the pursuit isn't happening from the mentee side. And I've had this happen to me, right? Oh, well, that idea was great, but I just haven't had the time to do it or whatever. It's like, well, they're wasting my time. So I think the important thing is, as a mentor, And as a mentee, rather, you want to be the best student. That's the most important thing. And in the book, Mentor to Millions, we also teach you how to get mentors, where to find mentors, things like this. Because a lot of people feel that it's out of reach, or I could never have a shark as a mentor. I love to tell this a quick story. I went to a big conference, 10,000 person conference. I was a keynote address person speaking there, and I'm leaving the conference. I get to the airport, and I'm at the gate getting a quick little snack before I jump on the plane. And this young boy, had to be 22 years old, comes over to me and hands me $100 bill. And he said, "Mr. Harrington, I've been following you for 3 days. I couldn't just come up and ask you for your time for free because I know how valuable it is, but I have one question and I want to pay you $100 to give me that answer." And so hey, what did I do? I said, "Sit down, take your $100 back." And now I'm mentoring him. But I love that approach. And by the way, for 3 or 4 months now, I've been mentoring this young entrepreneur. So sometimes it's the best approach can get the best mentor. And I love talking about some of these creative things. But yeah, in the book, Mentor to Millions, we talk a lot about how to get, where to get mentors, et cetera, and had a lot of fun with Mark writing the book also.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So speaking of, as we teased at the beginning, being mentored by a shark, Mark, Timm, you have a special offer and a website that you can share with everybody.
Yeah, we get asked all the time, "Hey, I don't have a mentor. Where do I get a mentor?" And so Kevin and I decided we were going to put it out there that anybody who buys this book and they go to Kevin Mentor, this is how easy it is. Go to kevinmentor.com. So you teased at the beginning, you want to have a shark as a mentor? Here's your opportunity. Go to kevinmentor.com and you'll have the ability to go buy the book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And then you come back there, input your information, and you'll get 30 days of mentorship from Kevin and I. It's going to cover topics like we talked about here. It's business topics, it's family topics, it's relational topics, it's life topics, but 30 days of mentorship. And guess what happens after 30 days? It takes 30 days to form a new habit. After those 30 days, you will be so addicted to the habit of mentorship that you're going to go out and find your own mentors, and you're going to know how to find the right mentors, and you're going to know how to be the right mentor. So that's what this is all about. We want people, in fact, our challenge is for people to go there and buy a book for their mentor, or use the example Kevin gave. Maybe there's somebody you want to mentor, and you send it to that person and say, "Hey, read this book and then hit me back up." And then you say, "How would you like to be the mentor in this book? I need to be the mentee." Or you've got someone that you're ready to start mentoring, you buy a book for them. So buy a book for a future mentor, buy a book for somebody you should be mentoring, and buy a book for yourself. We call that the trifecta of exponential impact, and you'll be on your way to being your own mentor to millions.
Well, that's awesome. And thank you for that offer. Again, kevinmentor.com. And we'll put links to that and everything in the show notes. The book, again, is Mentor to Millions. And we've been joined today by the co-authors, Mark Timm and Kevin Harrington. And Kevin, I feel like I need to end the conversation by saying something like, so I'm going to offer you 25% of the podcast for, I'm asking, I don't know, I should have probably only asked for like $100, but no.
Not $1 million? Oh, come on. Let's hear the big numbers. Those are the ones that drive me crazy. I want $1 million for 10%. My idea, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
We're going to keep growing the podcast, but thank you for being here and helping with that, Kevin and Mark.
You bet. Great being here. Thank you.
Thank you.